Persuasion, Chapter 1, Kellynch. Sir Walter Elliot lived at Kellynch Hall in Somersetshire with two of his daughters, Elizabeth and Anne. His third daughter, Mary, did not live at the Hall. She met Mr. Charles Musgrove. They married, and Mary went away to live at Charles's home in the village of Uppercross, not very far from Kellynch. Sir Walter was 54 years old and was a handsome man, but he was not a clever man. He only thought about his hair and his mustache, or the color of his coat or shirt or trousers. He never wanted to think about other things. His wife, Lady Elliot, a beautiful, clever, and friendly woman, was now dead. The two girls stayed with their father at the Hall, but they often visited their mother's good friend, Lady Russell, and she often visited them. Lady Russell lived in another big house not far from Kellynch Hall. She loved her friend's three daughters very much, but she loved the second daughter, Anne, more than the other two. Anne was a pretty but very quiet young woman. She was the cleverest of the three girls. She liked thinking. She liked talking to other people. She liked reading good books. But her father loved Elizabeth and Mary more than he loved Anne. He never talked about things with her. He wasn't interested in her. For Sir Walter, Anne was Anne was only Anne. Elizabeth looked after the hall with its big gardens and beautiful park, and Anne helped her. Mary sometimes came to visit them. Sir Walter, their father, never wanted to think about money. He liked buying new things for the house. He liked buying new jackets and shoes. He liked driving in expensive new carriages. But he never asked, "Where does the money come from? How much money have we got?" He did not like thinking about it. So after some years, the Elliot family didn't have much money. Sir Walter spoke to Elizabeth about it. Elizabeth spoke to Lady Russell about it. She asked Lady Russell to help them. "What can we do?" she asked her mother's old friend. "I do not know, but I can ask my friend Mr. Shepherd," Lady Russell answered. "He is clever with money. He can help us." Lady Russell came to the hall with her friend, Mr. Shepherd. They talked to Sir Walter and to Elizabeth. "You must leave Kellynch Hall," Mr. Shepherd told them. "This big house is too expensive for you. You must go and live in a smaller house." They all looked at Sir Walter. He was very quiet. He said nothing for a minute or two, but then he answered, "Yes, you are right. We must leave Kellynch Hall and find a smaller house to live in. Perhaps we can look for a house in Bath. It is not very far from here, and I like living in Bath. It is a beautiful city. A lot of interesting, rich families live in Bath, you know." Anne listened. She was not very happy. She was not happy. She did not like Bath. She remembered her 3 unhappy years at school there after her mother died. But they didn't ask Anne. Sir Walter was not interested in Anne. They were going to leave her beautiful home, Kellynch Hall. Bath was going to be her new home. One day soon after this, Mr. Shepherd was in Taunton, a town quite near Kellynch Hall. He met a man called Admiral Croft there, and his wife, Mrs. Croft. The Crofts had no children, and they were rich. Admiral Croft and his wife wanted to find a big house in Somersetshire near Taunton. "I am in the Navy," the Admiral told Mr. Shepherd, "but I have a holiday now for some months, and I want to take a nice, quiet house near here for our holiday." Mr. Shepherd told Admiral and Mrs. Croft about Kellynch Hall. They were very interested. They wanted to see it. "When can we visit Sir Walter Elliot and see his house, do you think, Mr. Shepherd?" asked Mrs. Croft. Mr. Shepherd asked Sir Walter the same question, and the Crofts visited the hall with Mr. Shepherd one afternoon, a week later, for tea. They met Sir Walter, Elizabeth, and Anne, and they all sat together and had tea. The Admiral and his wife liked the house and its gardens very much. They asked many questions about it. Mr. Shepherd wanted to know more about the Crofts, too, so he asked them some questions. And you know, Sir Walter, Mr. Shepherd said later, Mrs. Croft comes from Somersetshire too. Her brother lives quite near Killinch, she said. But what did she say her brother's name was now? I cannot remember. Anne listened. She waited, and then said quietly, Mr. Wentworth is his name, I think. That is the name, Mr. Wentworth. Thank you, Miss Elliot. Anne stood up suddenly and walked quickly out into the garden. She was excited. Her face was hot and red, and she did not want the other people in the room to see. In a few months, perhaps, he is going to be here at Kellynch, she said quietly. Mrs. Croft had two brothers. One of her brothers lived near Kellynch in Somersetshire, but her second brother was a young officer in the Navy. His name was Captain Frederick Wentworth. Some years before, in the summer of 1806, the young Captain Wentworth came to stay with his older brother in Somersetshire. He was a very handsome, clever, and strong young man. He met Anne, a pretty young 19-year-old girl, and the two young people soon fell in love. They were very happy together, but only for a short time. Captain Wentworth spoke to Sir Walter one day. Your daughter, Anne, and I are in love, sir, he said. We are very happy together. I am here to ask you, Sir Walter, for your daughter's hand. We want to marry. Sir Walter did not say yes or no. He was cold and unfriendly to Captain Wentworth, and he was not interested in his daughter, Anne. He did not want to help her to marry the young man she loved. He did not want Anne to be happy. Lady Russell wanted Anne to be happy, but she too did not want Anne to marry Captain Wentworth. She thought Anne was too young. Anne was only 19, and Captain Wentworth had no money. She wanted Anne to wait and find a richer, more important man to marry, not a young officer in the Navy. Anne listened carefully to Lady Russell. The older woman's persuasion slowly began to work. Slowly, Anne started to think her love for Captain Wentworth was wrong. Perhaps I am too young, she thought, and perhaps I cannot help Frederick to be happy. I must think of his work in the Navy. Perhaps he can do better without me. Perhaps Lady Russell is right. I know she loves me and is my friend. She saw Captain Wentworth one last time that summer. Her face was very sad. I'm very sorry, Captain Wentworth, she said to him, but I cannot marry you. But we are happy together, Miss Elliot, he answered. I do not understand this. Why? I cannot say, Anne answered, but that is my last word. We cannot marry. Captain Wentworth left Kellynch Hall that afternoon, and soon he left the country. He went to sea again in his ship. Anne changed. She was quieter. Her pretty face was often sad. She loved Captain Wentworth. She was not going to marry Captain Wentworth, so now she did not want to marry anybody. For more than 7 years, Captain Wentworth did not come back to England. He was now a rich man, and he was going to be in Somersetshire again, perhaps at Kellynch Hall, with his sister, Mrs. Croft.